Oh, internet. I'm just feeling really low.
Your favorite VTubers are making an idol group.
Oh, shoot, for real? Hello, everyone. I'm Folly 3D, and welcome to my most evil, sicko, self-serving video ever. I'm sculpting DENSETSU.EXE because they make me smile. DENSETSU.EXE is a retro 2000s internet-themed idol group made up of 3 VTubers: Mint Phantom, Phoebe-chan, and Victoria Vroman. They started in November last year, and since then they've put out one original song with one on the way, and they have their first 3D live coming up in July. Oh, I forgot to check that. I was just finishing up the Miku video when the group was announced, and I've been a bit obsessed ever since. It came at the perfect time for me where I needed something moe to fill the darkness. So let's get stuck in. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and please enjoy the time lapse. Wait! For 2 weeks starting on the 18th of May 2026, I'm fundraising for Cure Cancer Australia with creators big and small. And I'm doing little clay guy model commissions like this for donations. So if you like my little clay style PNG tuber model here, you can donate and get one for yourself. Check the TILTIFY link out in the description below for more info, and I hope to see you there for a good cause. So you'll notice I started this off without recording the process. Sorry. Look, I had to make sure they weren't going to become little bug-eyed freaks, so I noodled away at the head for a couple of days until I felt comfortable this was going to work. My inspiration for the style of these models came from the fact that a bunch of new cozy games seemed to be making the news at the time, and I really liked the doll-like quality the character models seem to have, with the big round eyes and big hands and feet. So, getting onto the actual Blockout, I'm using my reference I drew to maintain the style and size I want, and just filling in the segments of the body with spheres smushed into shape. After I have the basic building blocks down, I do a second pass over the body, redefining the shapes and adding secondary shapes like the tummy shaping and the butt. Now we're starting to merge the larger segments of the body together to sculpt the details and smooth out the joins. It seems I was secretly working on this while we were recording our voice-acted playthrough of Phoenix Wright 2. Shameless plug, check it out up here. Now don't freak out because I know these feet look pretty big right now. I think they look fun, and I knew I could get away with the stylization on unrigged sculpts. Shout out to all of my big appendages that always clip through your torso 3D VTubers. This hand-based mesh I actually stole from my previous sculpt. Have you heard of Hatsune Miku? You can check out my previous video up here if you haven't already. Now you can finally see the head mesh up close, and we're refining it a little. I think I got the ratio of face space to forehead space pretty well here, although it will look weird until we get some hair on them. Now hold my hand, this is going to get a bit scary. I've duplicated the head mesh for further modifying, and we're going to start making some big changes to start turning this into one of the girls. Can you guess who it is? This mouth gave me some trouble, but I do think I got the shape working in the end. Keep an eye out for when I have to lower the chin a little and make the cheeks chubbier to compensate for the facial muscle changes that come with opening a mouth. I'm adding this nice chunky eyelash line now, really focusing on emphasizing the girl's individual eye shapes. I hope I did alright. Also working on the best eyebrows now, just by masking out and extruding the shapes I want. Then I'm back to the eyes, adding individual lashes. I'm trying to match the actual lash shapes the girls have while also emphasizing them a lot, focusing on the angle which best emphasizes the eye shape. Moving on to that second version of the head I had stored for later, I'm doing the same process for the other two girls. This is going to be Vicky, who I struggled to stylize the most. I immediately lent into giving her the most Onesan look out of the three, but her eye shape is quite hard to pinpoint when she's emoting. I guess she's just too pretty. My bad, guys. I worked on her expression, which is just a little smile. I'll keep tweaking the face shapes as the project progresses. I also took this chance to add a temporary pupil to the eye, just to humanize the face a little more. And surprise, here's Mint's face. I don't know why I did this one off screen too, but here you can have a good look at her. I'm also giving her those pointy ears, and the base meshes are done for now. First up, Phoebe. Phoebe's dress was the first one I could work out how to block out in my mind, so she was first. I drew a little scribble with the grease pencil in Blender as an idea of how I wanted the pleats of the dress to be shaped, and then I took a circle and pushed the vertexes into that rough shape. Then, because the dress is basically a cone, I extended it upwards for the base shape. Then it was simply a matter of actually making it a dress by giving it more shape, but still keeping that pleat pattern. Moving on, I'm just polymodeling the collar. I use the shrink wrap modifier so it sticks to the surface of the body, and later I can edit it freely so it stands up more. I'm making a base frill mesh using the same method I used for Clown Miku. Making one frill, duplicating it using the array modifier, and then snapping it to a curve shape. In this case, it's a circle to act as Phoebe's armbands. I forget to flip the normals again, as you can see by this red color overlay, which freaks out the frills. Basically, if anything is acting strange, it's usually either that the normals are flipped, or I forgot to set the rotation and scale. Now I'm making a second mesh to use as an array. This is Phoebe's leaf-shaped trim on her cuffs and dress hem. This one gave me some trouble, so on the smaller areas I end up placing each leaf shape individually. Moving back to ZBrush, I'm quickly adding her stockings. And now we're working on her shoes. I do the same method for all three girls, but I mask out the shape I like for the shoe and extrude it, which gives us this bubbly shape. Now I'm going to chisel away at it, adding seam lines and flattening parts to get an actual shoe shape. When the mesh starts getting too overworked, I remesh it to a lower poly count and keep refining. I'm adding in her modesty lump here at the front. My favorite thing about 3D sculpts is that stuff like this will never be seen, so it doesn't have to make any sense on its own. I tried to add a bit of asymmetry to the dress, but it will be posed more later on. Here I'm adding thickness to the armbands and sculpting them to look nice and fluffy. And I'm going to place the leaves one by one around her wrists. Finally, we're unbalding her. I'm masking out the shape of her hairline and extruding it to make a scalp base, which we will add hair strands to later. Oops, I guess later is now. This is a different method than I used for Clown Miku, so I use this method here by Yan Sculpts. Basically, you have a curve that you can control for the placement of the individual strand, and its circumference is dictated by a second curve over here. I make two geometry curves, one a bit flatter for parts like her fringe, and a rounder one with a pointed tip for finer strands. Then I simply duplicate the strands and place them where I want. I had a lot of fun trying to simplify the girls' hairstyles with these bigger shapes. I wanted to make the hair quite blocky, and luckily each of the girls already has quite defined shapes in their hair. I'm taking a quick detour to watch this video here on how to make a braid from curves. I make Phoebe's little side braid, and I leave it a bit messy to sculpt over it later. Now we're back in ZBrush, and I'm happy with all of the parts so far, so now I can pose her. I'm using the transpose tool, which merges all of your objects together temporarily so you can pose them as one. I mask out areas I want to pose and just rotate them. Transpose tool merges all of your visible tools, so if I need access to an area that's usually covered up, I hide what I need to and reactivate it. I also move objects individually just to make it easier, like the limbs. Overall, transpose is good for the overall pose changes, like rotating the torso, and moving objects individually is best for limbs and digits. I am not very good at posing characters, but here's my general workflow. I start with contrapposting the body, shifting the weight to one side of the lower body, and then rotating the upper half in the opposite direction. Then I make sure that the placement of the legs makes sense with where I've decided the weight is being placed, so the leg with less weight on it can be raised, etc. Then I do something with the arms. Usually I just make sure the opposite arm to the leg with the weight on it is counterbalancing that weight. And that's all I'm good for, so I hope that makes sense. Now that she's looking cute, I'm adding in her wings because up until this point I hadn't considered how to do them, and I just stretched out a cube. I'm going to work on refining her sculpt now, starting with some detail on the hair. I'm just going over the shapes with the built-in hair brush from ZBrush, which adds some nice secondary shapes to the hair strands without getting too detailed. Then I'm merging together the arms and the torso so I can start smoothing out all of these joins. The posing created some issues with the elbows, so I had to pay special attention to get them not looking wacko. Now I'm defining her collarbones. And I'm adding in the leaf trim to her dress I made previously in Blender, and then deciding I don't know how to deal with that right now, so for now, Phoebe is done. Next up, Minto! At this point, I hadn't made Mint's head yet, so I'm dressing up Phoebe to make Mint's clothes. I'm using a cylinder with the shrink wrap modifier to snap it to the arm for the sleeves, and then once I like the base, I can shape it into her puffy ghost sleeves. I originally had the sleeves go well past the hand length, but realized that was just dumb and made it much simpler. Onto the skirt and all its layers. The skirt is just a half sphere with a ruffled edge, and now I'm adding the ruffle to the apron. I think Mint wins when it comes to how many individual ruffles I had to make in total for her outfit. Adding in the collar here, I want to point out that I was able to reuse the body shape for all three girls, but to differentiate them somewhat, I gave them individual assets. You'll see this come into play more with Vicky. Back to ZBrush and scary! I guess I did Mint's face off camera. I'm just getting distracted here remaking her eyebrows because I didn't like the previous ones. Now I'm adding the top half of her dress. For more form-fitting garments, I like to use the body and either sculpt directly onto it, like for socks, or mask out and extrude areas. I'm also adding in the waistband of the apron. The problem with the chibi model is that there's less surface area to work with all of the layers of clothing, so this area will be tweaked a lot during the whole process. Moving on to the shoes, and since Mint has heels, I had to adjust the posing of the foot, which looks a little grisly, but I do think it came out pretty good. I think Mint's shoes are my favourite of the three in terms of how I represented them. Onto the hair. Using the same process as Phoebe, I just lay on strands individually. Mint's hair was fun because it has these waves at the tips. If the parting of the hair gets a bit complex, I draw on some reference lines using the grease pencil and erase them later. And finishing it up with her a hoagie. Back in ZBrush, get bald. We're going to pose her now. This pose seems pretty simple, but it was hard to get the positioning on those arms looking natural. Not much to talk about here really, just making sure the overall pose doesn't look too symmetrical. It seems I cut out a lot of detail work, which is probably a good thing, but you can see I added a variety of straps, bows, and ruffles to her outfit. Finishing up with sculpting the details of her back and shoulders, and that's Mint. Finally, it's Vicky! I'm starting by adding some floof to the skirt shape that I brought over from Blender. I have to tweak the waist area a lot because she has a lot of layers going on. Okay, I've merged the upper torso together because I'm going to sculpt directly on there to make the shirt, so I smooth out all the seams. A fun new trick I found is if you use the flatten brush and hold Alt to invert it, it does a really good job filling in fabric mass, such as between her Vickies. I've brought in a couple of other objects from Blender, like her sleeves, and I'm chipping away at them. Around this point, I realized I unfortunately had to sacrifice her little overcoat shawl thing for the sake of posing and making the model's silhouette look good. Here I'm extruding the collar so it's no longer just a 2D plane. And now onto the boots. Similarly to Mint, I had to compensate for the heel on the boots. This was much easier to mask out because it's just the whole bottom half of the leg. This one was fun to work on. I focused on defining the seam lines of the leather and making sure she had a nice chunky sole. Now onto the hair. Vicky's hair direction technically doesn't make realistic sense, but I just wanted to make sure it wasn't too crowded. I covered her whole scalp as if her hair was tied up, then worked on the bangs. It's amazing how much this doesn't look like Vicky until you add that big curly fringe piece. Her twin drills were made in the same method as the other hair strands, but I had to go into the add-ons section of Blender and enable additional curve shapes. Once I could generate a spiral, it was just about tweaking the shape until I liked it. Here's her overskirt. This thing was very troublesome. I wanted it to be nice and poofy, but it all had to coalesce at her waistline. As you can see, I started with a half sphere and just created pleats by moving columns of polygons up and out. On to posing. Vicky is very letter V coded here. Again, adding more busyness to her waistline by trying to rest her hand there, but I think I got it to work. I think she looks really cute. And here's a peek at Phoebe and Mint, and the trio are 80% done. Update from my Miku video. I found out how to eyedrop onto your reference image. You just have to make sure your reference image is live. It's got this like gizmo on top of it. And you can see here where I'm eyedropping, it is actually picking up the colors from the reference. And then I can hide the reference. And now we scroll through all of these subtools and start pasting in some colors. While we're coloring, let me gush about Densetsu as a whole. So, to make a long story short, Yeah, you might just need to Google this one, guys. But anyway, the month is November 2025, and suddenly the announcement comes out that Mint, Phoebe, and unreleased third person are forming an official idol group. I literally, and I mean actually like literally, screamed the day I saw the announcement. Let's start with Mint. She's the member I've known of the longest. I've watched her streams regularly since before the second time she was a ghost. And I've been rooting for her for so long. I love her and I want the best for her so bad. No parasocial. Phoebe I was introduced to from the initial VShojo Fallout, and if there's one thing to be glad of from that event, it's that. I immediately clicked with Phoebe's streaming style. She's super cozy and just the sweetest and a little silly. And then her streams were running constantly in the background of my computer from that point on. And her work as a 2.5D idol is so cool. Did you know she voice acts in Little Goody Two Shoes? I only played the demo, I'm sorry, it was really good, I'm just so busy. Now Vicky I didn't know about at all, but I was eagerly awaiting her debut. I knew she was an old head in the VTubing scene, but I didn't know of her in any previous incarnations. So imagine my surprise when I turn into her debut. Her karaoke is entirely 80s Japanese pop, which is my latest obsession. She gargles with Yorkshire tea in between songs, and...
Are you the yokai that has a butt in its ass?
So this is what finding an Oshi is like. This just solidified that I want these girls to succeed so badly. They're all so hardworking and funny and really talented. It's been so fun hanging out in the Denshi Discord, and while I often feel a little out of place being so new to this idol fan space, it's just been so nice to have something pleasant to geek out over and learn about. And with that, let's get on with the final reveals. So, how do you like them? I'll be so honest, I feel like something's been lost between viewing the model in 3D and the final renders. But these renders took me honestly 2 weeks straight, right up until the last 50 frames, and I realized that even though Blender said it was using my GPU, it actually wasn't, and then suddenly the last slog took less than an hour. Hahaha, funny prank, Blender. But I'm kind of thinking, maybe we redo the girls in the future once I've improved? Maybe if they get cool idol uniforms or something? And maybe then they'll all have full front and back outfit references by then. They were really fun to work on regardless and fed my Densetsu brainworms for a while. But I think this video is long enough, so let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for watching the video. Give it a like if you liked it and subscribe because it helps a lot. As of posting this video, I just hit 200 subscribers. So subscribe and maybe you can be my 300th subscriber, Kiriban. Anyone used to use DeviantArt and recognize that term? Come join the Sucker Squadron over on Twitch, where I play creepy and cute games and also work on projects like this. I have some really cool projects planned, so I hope to see you around. Finally, have a great day. Let me know about your favorite idols or VTubers in the comments below. And don't forget the charity stream from the 18th to the 31st of May. Come and get some goodies and help out for a great cause. Bye! Thanks for watching. Come hang out live on Twitch and join the Sucker Squadron. You can find all of my Twitch VODs here, and my Ko-fi is here too if you'd like to help fund these videos. Love you, bye!